The era of Viktor Orban's rule has ended after 16 years of monopoly on power in Hungary. Orban was removed from office by his recent ally and even fellow party member Péter Magyar and his party Tisza, which was actively promoted just 2 years ago. Observers at Sunday's elections say that Hungary's heavily distorted electoral system, combined with a pro-government media environment, made the elections in Hungary unfair. And Viktor Orban used the full weight of the state apparatus to secure his victory, but even that didn't help him. But who is Péter Magyar and why? How was he able to overthrow Viktor Orban in just 2 years, even though he was previously a loyal member of the Fidesz party and his whole family were Viktor Orban's allies? Let's answer this question together in this episode. My name is Alexei Pecci, let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, please subscribe to the channel, leave any comment under this episode and give it a like. And also subscribe to my Telegram channel Pecci News, the link to it is in the description of this video. So, on this YouTube channel, we have already discussed Hungary's electoral system and the consequences of Viktor Orban's resignation and even his mysterious disappearance right after the elections. And also the fact that Viktor Orban's family urgently left Hungary. If you missed it, I recommend subscribing to the channel, going back and watching it. In this episode, we will discuss who Péter Magyar is. Péter Magyar even looks much better than Viktor Orban, I have to admit. He is in good physical shape, elegantly dressed, and at 45 years old, he is about 17 years younger than Orban. Péter Magyar, whose last name means Hungarian, comes from a wealthy Budapest family. Among his relatives are lawyers and judges. Also, and very importantly, among his relatives is former Hungarian President Ferenc Madl, who served from 2000 to 2005 during Viktor Orban's first term as Prime Minister. And this is just the beginning of how Péter Magyar was closely connected with Viktor Orban. Magyar's journey from a loyal supporter of Orban to his sworn enemy was swift and rapid. Just 2 years ago, he was a member of the ruling Fidesz party, and before that. He is married to Judit Varga, once one of the rising stars of the party, who was predicted to have a stellar future in Viktor Orban's party. The couple, Péter Magyar and Judit Varga, lived in Brussels, Belgium for about 10 years, where Magyar worked as a diplomat and Varga worked for a Fidesz party member of the European Parliament. In 2018 they returned to Budapest with their 3 sons. And the following year, Varga was appointed Minister of Justice in Orban's government. And she left this position in 2023 to lead the Fidesz party in the 2024 European Parliament elections. But this plan was derailed by a scandal that shook the Fidesz party in early 2024. The then president of Hungary, Katalin Novak, pardoned a now former official who had been convicted of covering up cases of abuse against underage boys in a children's home. The revelation of the pardon undermined the perception many had of Orban's government as a defender of Christian and family values. Then everyone suddenly found out that Orban's officials knew about the abuse of children and even pardoned those involved. Judit Varga, as Orban's Minister of Justice, was also involved in the pardon case. That's why after the scandal she resigned and many saw her departure as forced by Orban. They say Orban simply put all the blame on the women, meaning Judit Varga and President Katalin Novak. Although he was the one to blame for this, it was his officials. The scandal started to grow, and it was at this moment that Péter Magyar realized that the voter needed a certain just gentleman who would protect them. Everyone is cunning, he was dubious. In February 2024, Péter Magyar, who at that time was still a member of the Fidesz party, gave a sensational interview accusing Orban and his allies of covering up the pardon scandal with women. He also used the interview to share information he obtained thanks to his proximity to Orban's government. And it was at that moment that Magyar stated, quote, "A few families own half the country." That interview caused a sensation throughout Hungary, with 3 million views in a country with a population of less than 10 million people. Immediately after this interview, Péter Magyar joins the Tisza party, quickly rises through the ranks, and in just a few weeks becomes the leader of this party. Under his leadership, the Tisza party unexpectedly receives almost 30% of the Hungarian vote in the European Parliament elections in June 2024, which allows Magyar to become a member of the European Parliament. Remember, his ex-wife was supposed to lead the rival party, that very Fidesz party, but because of the scandal she left politics altogether. Magyar began actively promoting the idea that finally there was a party that could defeat Orbán. For many years there were supposedly opposition parties, but no one could defeat Orbán. Magyar says, here it is, the Tisza party will win. And from that moment the number of members in the Tisza party increased sharply. Let me note here that Tisza is an abbreviation of Hungarian words meaning respect and freedom, and it's also the name of a major river in the country. And that's why Magyar came up with such a cool slogan, saying that the TS party is rapidly flooding all of Hungary, as if the river had overflowed. In addition, while Orbán's election campaign this year was mainly built around foreign policy and his relationships with world leaders. I'm friends with Trump, I'm friends with Putin, and so on and so forth. Magyar's campaign was strictly focused on domestic issues, such as the economy and corruption. Magyar deliberately said almost nothing about Russia's war against Ukraine and relations with Brussels. He focused solely on domestic issues. And for 2 years, Magyar actively traveled around the country and met with voters. And now Magyar's political strategist chose simply the most effective strategy possible. Magyar didn't just come to cities for rallies. No, he also stayed in every city and town for several hours after the rally to meet with local residents, sit down, and sort of talk with them. As a result, voters fell in love with Magyar, seeing him as one of their own. Another interesting aspect of Magyar's election strategy is the idea that Orbán needs to be beaten to the punch. Well, for example, in 2022, Péter ran against Orbán and he could have won. And at that time, Orbán portrayed him as someone who would lead Hungary into war. Like everything would be like in Ukraine. And it worked. And then Péter couldn't win at all. But Magyar, as you've probably already figured out, worked for many years inside Viktor Orbán's team, and he knew his methods. That's why Magyar's team was essentially able to anticipate the blows even before they were delivered. For example, in February, Péter Magyar stated that the Fidesz party was planning to blackmail him in the coming days by publishing a video recording of him captured in an intimate moment with his then-girlfriend, which was allegedly filmed by representatives of the Fidesz party. But now he says, well, now Orbán's representatives will leak a video where, excuse me, I'm having sex. And this case made voters, love Magyar even more. And then Péter Magyar came out and said, quote, yes, I'm 45 years old. Yes, I have a sex life. Yes, with an adult partner. Dear cowards from the Fidesz party, post everything as it is. In the end, it seems that Orbán's people decided not to publish anything like that. And actually, no one really knows whether such videos existed or not. But people believed Magyar. And Orbán already looked as dirty as possible. Well, if he wanted to blackmail his opponent with a video of him having sex with a woman, that's just really low. No one knows if this video existed, but it still worked. Moreover, Orbán wanted to portray Magyar as a staunch liberal, a supporter of gays and so on, last year. And what did Orbán do? He specifically banned the LGBT Pride Parade in Budapest, expecting that Péter Magyar would speak out in favor of holding the Pride Parade, that he would say, how can this be, you can't ban LGBT pride, and so on. But in his carefully crafted statement, Magyar avoided mentioning the LGBT movement by name. Instead, he stated that Orbán's government seeks to instill fear and divide us, and he emphasized that Hungary needs a prime minister who will, quote, protect and stand up, represent absolutely all Hungarians, again a very subtle move. That is, as you heard, there was neither support nor condemnation of the LGBT movement. Magyar was also cautious regarding Ukraine, which Orbán also criticized. Magyar essentially refused to discuss foreign policy during his election campaign, and so Magyar's almost complete silence on Ukraine led some to suggest that Magyar's Hungary, like Orbán's Hungary, would hinder the European Union's efforts to support Kyiv. And some, on the contrary, were confident that Magyar would be 100% in favor of Ukraine. But no one knew this for sure. And that was exactly the idea of Péter Magyar and his team. By the way, to better understand the situation, a similar tactic was used by Volodymyr Zelensky in 2019. You remember there were no specifics on key issues, but there were bags and promises about social programs and fighting corruption. And only when it became clear that the Tisza party had won, Péter Magyar stated that he would not block the European loan to Ukraine for 90 billion euros and that Russia would not become a friend of Hungary. In addition, Hungary hopes to improve relations with Brussels, since the European Commission is currently withholding a total of about 35 billion euros from Hungary due to concerns about backsliding from democratic principles under Orbán. And it should be understood that only half of the frozen funds is equivalent to 10% of Hungary's GDP. This, as you can imagine, has led to a real economic downturn in this country. Well, just like Zelensky in Ukraine in 2019, Magyar managed to gather a very broad coalition, from rather conservative right-wingers to staunch liberals and even leftists. And, as Hungarian political strategists are saying now, votes for Péter Magyar are mostly votes against Viktor Orbán. Remember 2019 in Ukraine, votes for Volodymyr Zelensky were mostly votes against Petro Poroshenko. Whether Magyar will be able to hold this coalition together, only time will tell. During his election campaign, he constantly emphasized that the task of restoring Hungary would take time. He promised to dismantle Orbán's illiberal political system step by step, brick by brick, and this will really take some time. So, as they say, we watch and wait. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you think the work of this channel is important, interesting, and necessary, I encourage you to support it financially with your donation or a paid subscription. How can you do that? All the links and details are in the description of this video. It clearly says support Alexei Pecci's channel. Choose any option that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you can give. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.